Western civilization in place, oh, well, we're civilized because we're Christian. Okay, well, Christianity is an African religion. Well, no, Jesus was born in the Middle East. The Middle East is an abstraction from the British. That's not what they call it. There. It's Africa. Okay? Egypt at least pushed their influence there. It's African. So what does that mean? Yeshua was a Christ. That is, he's an African with an African sense of humor, wisdom, passion, conviction, and courage, which he held on to his last words on the cross. The true words of which Western Christianity still doesn't use. Let me break them down to you. Now, my source for this, and this may appear on a midterm near you. People are asking me about that. This is the Semitic Languages. And there's an acronym, Okay, Semitic languages are sister languages. Amharic, Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew. Those are the Semitic languages. They're sisters. That means they're not necessarily identical, but they're closely related. So remember in the first week when I gave you 4 words for peace in the Semitic languages. Salam, Shalama, Selam, and Shalom. In turn, Arabic, Amharic, Aramaic, and Hebrew. Okay? They're sisters. So you can see that they're closely related, but they're not identical. But they do share, like sisters, the same capacity. So for example, a single word can be translated up to 10 different ways, and you're supposed to understand all 10 ways that it can be translated. Simultaneously. Okay? If you're an educated person, or even if you're not a literate person, you're supposed to be able to understand all the different ways and be able to pick out the meaning. You cool with that? Remember I did this already, right? Michael Jackson's cool, or he's bad, or Miles J, that's a bad piece of drum. Okay, right? Same idea. That's an Ebonic sense. Okay? We be doing it in Ebonics means we have done it, we are doing it, we will do it, we have always done it in one word, right? And you're supposed to know which sense I mean, or take in all of them. Same with the Semitic languages, right? Eli, Eli, Lamana Shabachthani. So I have a section of the Bible, Matthew, the book of from Aramaic, translated the language that Yeshua spoke. Okay, you know him by his Greek name, Jesus. Yeshua, which means the supreme being, Yah, or Jah, but there's no J back then. Yah, Shua, saves and restores. This is where we get the phrase in English, Jesus saves. That's literally what his name means. Yeshua, on the cross, says, Eli, so there's a 5 parallel translation of the book of Matthew. It's 5 parallel translators translating directly from Aramaic into English. Which, in order to even read Aramaic, you have to have ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew, because the languages have changed, ancient Syriac. You need to understand 5 languages just to read Aramaic in the original. So these 5 scholars basically translate the book of Matthew, line by line, page by page, the entire book. Now, what I found interesting was, what I'd like to do is like contrast and compare. So, do you understand that there's a difference between speaking a language when it's your cradle language? That is the language you were born with, that people spoke around you. So, here's the thing you may learn whether you are parents or not. A baby, a human baby, is a computer. That brain, that little brain is a computer that's formatted to learn each and every language that's spoken around it. Multiple languages. Because remember, in Africa, it's normal to speak 5 languages. So where would you learn it if not in school, it's being spoken around you. You name things, right? Asante told you that, right? The beginning. What's the beginning of civilization? You gotta name things first, right? So part of that is that multiple languages means that you have to think of, is there a word in this language for that concept or not? Then you have to go to another language if that language has a word that you have that describes it well, right? So multiple languages. So these scholars are basically translating from it's the same task, Aramaic into English, but and they're basically saying the same thing, except that the single Aramaic native speaker says something different. Okay, so 4 of the scholars are saying, Father, Father, Eli, Eli, why have you forsaken me? But the Aramaic speaker says, Father, Father, for this I was kept. Also means this was my destiny. Notice the difference between why have you forsaken me and this was my destiny? Way different. So if it's that different, what else are they missing? So it's not just a simple language translation or possible translation error. There is a different context when you go straight to Aramaic. But even basing the Aramaic, you can get into problems in the 20th century. So for example, Lamza had trouble getting the Peshitta. The Peshitta is the oldest form of the Bible, the original one, written in 450 AD. When was King James written?
1,000 years later?
No. Well, yes, 1,000 years later, but when was it written? Does it really matter whether you identify as Christian or not? I mean, I can pass for Christian, but the reason I say pass is this is the cross that I use. This is the original cross of Christianity, and it predates Christianity. And the reason I say it's the original cross of Christianity is because that's what the American Heritage Dictionary says, and I believe everything dictionary says, right? But it's referred to as an ansate cross, a crux annasata in Latin. It means it's a cross with a handle on it. The typical cross that you see in Christianity is the Latin cross, which is different from the Ethiopian cross, which is the second oldest cross in Christianity. So the Ankh is the first cross of Christianity. And it's the only one of those symbols that actually explicitly means eternal life. So the reason I say I pass for Christian, technically I would be a Aramaic primacist liberation theologist. That means, okay, I was raised, okay, Jesus is black, and his name isn't Jesus, so you need to, one, get the name that his mama called him, and call him that. That's only respectful. And you need to find the word in the language that he spoke. The original one. Now, my grandpa, when he's telling me that it's 6, like, he's not saying, oh, it's Aramaic, and yet, he's just saying that's what you need to do. Okay. Really? Jesus is black? Well, then how come we don't have a black Jesus in our church in Oakland in 1965? And he said, white folks would burn the church down if we did that. Okay. So you can't talk about this because people will think you're crazy or get pissed. Right? So, okay. That was one of the sources of the death threats, saying that. I'm going, one of you wrote, oh, well, Beethoven may be black. Look, it's white people that are writing that Beethoven is black. White people saying that knew him, calling him mulatto. White people are calling him mulatto. Only one use of that word in the English language. So, I get this email, oh, people like Harris will be dealt with in the coming racial holy war. Like, really? Are you seriously saying that to me? Okay, you're 16 from Junction City, and I'm dealing with Crips and Bloods and skinhead. Who are you, really? I should be scared of you? And anyway, I'm just quoting what white people said. All right, are we back yet here? No. What is up with that? All right, for this I was kept. So Isho once said, Rome is cruelty, by which he didn't mean the empire, but the phenomenon that became the template for Western civilization. And Rome itself was based on existing templates. So, the Peshitta.
What did he say about Rome again?
Rome is cruelty. Yeah, I think so. So Peshitta was in 450 AD. King James Version, late 1500s to 1600 AD. So yeah, more than 1,000 years difference. And what becomes interesting is, like, even when you talk to people who say that they're Christian, and okay, so when was the King James Version of the Bible created? Like, you think that would be a basic thing that they would teach, but they don't. They don't know. And where was it translated from? Oh, from Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. Okay, well, Yeshua didn't speak Greek or Latin. That was a language of the Romans who killed him. Hebrew technically wasn't Jewish. Got a basis for saying that. So, those of you who are familiar with Christianity, Genesis in particular, where's the Garden of Eden? I mean, it says in Genesis, right? No idea? Okay. In Genesis it says, a river ran out of Eden, splits into 4 heads, and then names the 4 heads. So translating the 4 heads into English, Blue and White Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates. Okay, those are the rivers that surround the Garden of Eden. So we're not like talking about a park or like Madison Square Garden. We're talking about Blue and White Nile, okay, in Egypt, or Kemet. And then the Tigris and Euphrates is encompassing the entire Arabian Peninsula and running through downtown Baghdad. That's the Garden of Eden. I mean, if you're going to interpret Genesis literally. Okay, so 4 rivers, Blue and White Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates. Yeshua spoke Aramaic. And so there are scriptures that exist in Aramaic, but you might not have heard of them until this class. Is that true? Have you heard of Aramaic before this class?
Yes.
Yes? Why? Where?
I don't know. I just knew it was a language.
Okay. This is annoying enough so that I go to plan B because you really should see this. So let's see here. Slide 368. Save as. Watch it start working, huh? Save as, let's see, desktop, thumb drive, okay, there. So I can do more than one thing at one time. So, Aramaic. And we'll get to that in a second. As soon as I open up PowerPoint on this PC. Device removal, yes, I know, thank you. I'm always, let's see here. Is that the desktop? Ah, good. Did it get that? I guess. Ah, yes. 369. Technology, you mess with me, you messing with the wrong brother. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground, huh? We're not even a third of the way through yet. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so to create pyramid cities, you need a spiritually aware, literate culture grounded in an awareness of nature and the cosmos. That oral culture precedes and survives a written culture. So in other words, it comes before, but it also can survive a written culture. Because in order to have a written culture, especially in like today's world, today's context, you need schools. You can teach people literacy if they're not getting it at home. You know, what would happen if, for example, you know, I mean, there's several series on television that talk about what happens if our culture based on electricity suddenly loses electricity. What happens then? What do we lose? We lose computers, we lose everything based on electricity. Do we go back to books? Well, how many people are reading? There is that, right? So the scriptures, as they were tales told orally long before they were written down. In at least the 4 Semitic sister languages, which are designed for improvisation, personal interpretation, and variation, and to take into account multiple meanings. Okay, they actually have terms for this, both in Arabic and in Hebrew. So, overstand, while I'm using hip-hop here, basically the principle is the same. Understand with your head, understand with your heart, overstand from the point of view of your soul. So, we actually did this with word, right? So, peace in Aramaic, Amharic, Arabic, and Hebrew. Hebrew, the reason it's spelled like this is this was actually a tribe. That was their name. That's where the language came from. So they weren't the ones that were only Jewish, but it became became associated with them. So shalama, salam, salam, shalom, peace in those languages. So when Yeshua talked about Shala, pray in my name, as it's translated into English, in Aramaic, it means something more than just pray in my name. So pray in my name, you would think from a literal translation of English, means saying Jesus, 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 Jesus. Right? Like repetition. Pray in my name. Jesus, Jesus. In Jesus' name I pray. Okay. Well, it means something more than that in his original language in that phrase. So, for example, within that worldview, and I'm using several different Semitic languages. So the word for supreme being in Aramaic, Allah, can be pronounced different ways, but Allah, it means sacred unity, the one before whom there are no others, everything. Sacred unity. Elohim in Hebrew, basically is another name for God. The head angel. Elohim, the head spirit. Allah, al means the, la means the nothingness. Alat, who is a moon goddess worshipped at the Kaaba. Ka is soul, ba is body in Kemetic. Kaaba. All right, so a moon goddess. Alat means the manifest. So Alat's symbol are a crescent moon and a star. Okay, so Allah, the nothingness. Alat, the manifest. Ina, inana, I. So, every time Yeshua is quoted in the King James Version of the Bible, which remember is not translated from Aramaic, every time he's quoted as using the singular pronoun I, in the Peshitta he's using ina, which literally translates as I and I. That is, I and I. I and I. I and I. Simultaneously. Okay, little I, big I, and then the we. Just similar to what like Ross does. I and I. Let's see, what was that? Bob Marley. I and I build a cabin, and I plant the corn. You know, he's not talking about himself personally. He's talking about in slavery. Inanna is a moon goddess. So we be doing it. So we went through this already. All right, so first line in the Lord's Prayer. Abun de Boashmaya. And a Heb Lav Weld Babakun, which I'll expand upon later in other slides when we get fully into the Aramaic words of Yeshua. I'm basically just setting the context in terms of by looking at a particular culture in terms of something that you may or may not be familiar with in terms of having hidden depth. So, as an example, Western civilization, i.e., and a Romanized form of Christianity, is like a swimming pool. The actual source is more like an ocean or a river. Deeper, complex, turbulence. And how you resolve that. Not a swimming pool. So, Abun de Boashmaya is the first line of what's referred to in English as the Lord's Prayer. Abun literally means, so there's three levels of Aramaic. Literal, relational, and metaphorical. And Aheb Labwel Babakun, which basically is, so Abun literally means birther. Okay? There is a supreme being that does have an aspect of father, but in Aramaic, father is Abba. Because in Aramaic, Ab means all the fruit that comes from a single tree. Okay? Well, just like sacred unity contains all the different differences, all the diversity, all the fruit that proceeds from a single tree. So Ab is all the fruit, Abba is father, Abun is birther, because definitely 2,000 years ago, fathers are not birthing anything. So literally this line, Abun de Boashmaya, birther, you create all that moves in light. Aheb Lab Weld Babakun, which is translated into English as love your enemies. Except in Aramaic, it's instructions on how to do it. So, in a Christian framework, basically translated for the Greek, love, there's two kinds of love. They are Eros, which is erotic love, where we get the word eros from the Greek god of sexual love, and agape. Did I hear that? Okay, agape in Aramaic.